My name is Mike Shackleford, and I'm glad to be with you today. And I just wanted to share just briefly, I am a presenter that I work with SDE for quite a number of years, and a variety of other options. I've been a classroom teacher and administrator. But today I wanted to really address what I believe is really a critical issue when we think about education today, effective teaching and learning, and what we can really do to have the greatest impact. I know you hear so much about different type of ideas that people may have about, I wish there was the silver bullet that would cure all things for kids, but one of the things that no matter what we may be working on in schools is the idea of having long-term sustained training. This is something that I've been participating in for over 15 years and have seen significant impact on teachers, but more importantly on students from having this continued relationship of working with particular strategies and skills over a period of time. If we're really going to see sustained change in our schools, it takes a period of time to build a relationship with someone that can bring about the type of change that we're looking for in our schools. A model that I started over 15 years ago, or approximately 15 years ago, was coming in and doing initial trainings with a core group of teachers and administrators, and having continued throughout the year follow-up. And so I might work with them 3, 4, 5 times a day or 2 at a time over the course of that school year, and having assignments between each time so that they had the opportunity to make mistakes, to practice, to implement the strategies that they're learning. You could really take any type of topic that SDE might offer, but offer it in a sustained, purposeful way that over a period of time to really build the capacity within the people that we're asking to use these strategies. Too many times we go to a workshop, we hear something one time, and then we're expected to go back into the classroom and to put it into practice, or even to share it with other teachers. And the thing is that we haven't been able to practice it ourselves. We haven't been able to try it out and see what works and doesn't work and make refinements. And then because there's no follow-up with it, I never receive any feedback on how I'm personally doing and trying to implement that particular strategy. I believe there's where we're going to begin to see the type of changes that happen in teacher practices and also in student results that happen in the classroom. The first thing that I would ask is for you to make an assessment of your school or your district and ask yourself, are we seeing the type of changes and results that we're looking for in our school and classrooms based on the professional development that we're currently offering? If the answer is yes, then that's wonderful. But if the answer is no, and saying, I feel like we're just constantly putting new things out there, or that we present something in a limited fashion, but we don't see really carryover into the classroom, and here we spent that time, money, and effort in that one-day type of event, but we're not getting the payoff from that, then there's where I would say that long-term training might be a viable option for you to consider in your school or district. One of the first things after admitting that we need to change is, I would say that we really need to take a look at what are our areas of strength in our school or in our district, and what would be the areas of need. And so I call this kind of like a reality check. And we have to be very honest here. I think sometimes we don't want to admit that we have some areas of need, but I don't know of anybody, any school or any individual that doesn't have some area where they could improve upon. And I say the same thing happens in our schools. So having an honest assessment of where we are right now, what are our strengths, and what are the areas of need? And then based on those areas of need, what's the evidence or the data that you have that supports? We can't just think that this is an area of need or believe that this is an area of need. What is the evidence or the data that supports that this is why we need to work in this particular area? Again, if we're going to make a time and personnel and financial expenditure to bring about this PD, then we need to have the evidence that backs it up so that we're making truly an impact on teachers and students. And then we have to be honest and to trust one another and to say that when we come together, we are going to be open and honest about what's going on and to really come in here with an attitude of really ready to learn and say, I've got to let all my biases go. What is it we really need to be working on, and to really sit here and invest in the actual training that takes place, and just doing that in a very collaborative and cohesive way. So one group that reminds me up in New York, and this group of people had such a passion for this school, a high school, that they really wanted to save the school. And the initial core group that was identified was about 22 people who truly, deeply believed in saving this school, and they saw the value in these children. And so that initial group started with a group who really believed. Over the 3 years that I worked there in that school, we then began to add other peoples, and we had some naysayers. We had some people who kind of rode the fence. And we have to begin to include those people. I personally take it as a challenge to try to turn those people around. And I've seen some cool experiences that happen, but if we can get those people, oftentimes that pays a huge dividend in spreading out the word out to other people who then become committed as well. But ultimately, the idea of having these multiple core groups, sometimes we may run one a year, sometimes I may run 2 a year. But the idea is to build a capacity within the school so that eventually I work myself out of a job, and there's enough capacity within the school or the district that the efforts move forward without me. And that may seem odd, but I truly am always looking to work myself out of a job. And so you may ask, well, how long of a period might this end up taking? Well, generally I ask people to commit from anywhere from 2 to 5 years. 5 years is absolutely generally the longest. But at least with 2 years, so that they see that there is enough capacity built, and that people see this is not just a 1-year event and then another year something new is going to come in. Because let's face it, if you've been in education long enough, we know about the flavor of the month or the flavor of the year. And we never wait for anything to go long enough and to build enough capacity before we go, see, I told you that wouldn't work, and then we bring something else in, and it never builds. People just suddenly say, I'm just going to ride under the radar, this too shall pass. And I think that's such a shame, because we spent the money, we spent the time and the investment of personnel. Why would we simply want it to pass away? If we really believe, and we've done the research in advance, like I said earlier, and really identified and being honest about what our needs are, then we have to be willing to commit the time, the people, and the resources to help bring that to fruition and to really make that impact on the teaching and learning that happens in the school or the district. But ultimately, we have to produce results. And so we need to see the impact of long-term sustained training. Some of the ways that I do this, I actually will do school and classroom visits. I'll go around with administrators and we'll do walkthroughs. and even with the leadership training as a sustained training. Oftentimes we teach people how to do walkthroughs, department chairs, administrators, all of that. What does it look like? But there you can go around and actually with your own eyes and your own ears and listen in and watch and see the type of practices that are taking place. You can see the walls. You can watch the kids. You can listen in to the conversations. You can see the practices of the teachers. So you begin to see results that in turn then begin to impact our standardized test. Standardized test is only one measure. It's an important measure, but it's one measure. But all those other intangibles as well, that based upon those sustained trainings, begin to see those practices play out with boys and girls. And that's a reason why to do sustained training. Obviously, one of the big factors in the way that I structure, and many people with SDE structure, is obviously using collaboration, using group work, and modeling in the training what ought to actually be happening in the classroom. We're never going to come in here in this kind of training and teach one way and then expect something different in the classroom. We ought to model and practice exactly the way that it ought to be happening in the classroom that happens here in the training. So no matter what the topic may be, you're still going to have practices, whether it be charting, small group, standing conversations, larger group, debates, having standing debates where you move from one side of the room for agree or disagree, whatever those kind of things, and practicing those very practices that we ought to be seeing and that we know that are effective in the classroom. And that everyone must take responsibility. One of the things that I ask for all sustained training is not only have teachers there, but you must have an administrator from every school. If it's by a district, you have to have at least one administrator with each school group that's represented in the training. Why? Well, if you want to be supported at the school, the administrator has to hear what's being said and to be a part of it so that they can help support the teachers in their own school. So this is a group effort of teachers, administrators, maybe instructional coaches, those people working together so that they have a strong, cohesive team back at their district or back at their school so that they continue this conversation and the work that's done during the periodic meetings of the trainings during the school year. So when I look at benefits, obviously everybody's interested in test scores. Doesn't bother me, and I'm all for good test scores. But I think if we look at the long-term picture, the benefits that really come from this, that the results will be better test scores when we have kids who are better thinkers, better questioners, better at problem solving, being able to use the curriculum as a vehicle rather than as the primary piece, and having kids think deeply, to read deeply, to write thoughtfully, doing all those type of things. And these are things and changes that I've seen happen in classrooms. I think also as teachers begin to see these changes happening in the classroom, I think it invigorates them to continue to research more and to want to learn more. And also as administrators, I think that it encourages them to want to share the word out, get more people involved as they begin to see these practices. We're really talking about a cultural change here. Doing long-term sustained training is a cultural change. The thing is that we constantly need to be revising and going back and looking at our data. As the results start coming in and we see practices changing in the classroom, we need to be constantly updating and changing the curriculum that we put into this long-term sustained training, that we evolve that as people begin to grow and build their own capacity. I just want you to know that I would love to be able to talk to you, and I know that we're going to have an opportunity to have some dialogue a little later on and to be able to maybe take some of your questions and all, but I do again want to reiterate the homework assignment that I would ask you to do that would really help prepare you for our further conversation. go back and look at your school or look at your district and really ask yourself some serious questions. Look at your current PD practices. Maybe even look what's happened in the past, and if you even have plans for a little further in the future, what do you have planned? How did you identify those? How do you know that those are the needs? What's the data? What's the evidence that you're basing that on? We can't think or believe or feel that this is what's needed, but we need evidence. And then based on that, ask yourself, is our current PD plan going to help us to build the capacity to be able to move forward and to make a difference for the practices that happen in the classrooms and ultimately the practices that are used with our boys and girls in the classroom?